Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Welcome to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage, the Vault Series. Today's clip was shot back in 2009 here in Nashville over at Duane Eddy's house. This was the second interview I did with Duane. It's probably my favorite interview, actually. Duane is totally comfortable. He's in his home. He's got his guitar in his hand. And I just stumbled into a conversation. He was talking about being on the road, like on the Dick Clark, on those caravan tours, and all the bands that would ride together in the buses, you know, whether it was black or white. And this, of course, this is 1957, 58. And segregation was really heavy at the moment. And I asked Duane, I said, well, how did you work it out to where the black artists could get a hotel room, or when they couldn't get a hotel room? And his whole demeanor changed. And it's, to see him talk about this, because Duane was from Arizona, and myself being from the deep south, I barely remember seeing some colored, white water fountains, bathrooms, that kind of thing. Duane had never seen anything like that. And he talks about the first time that he experienced that on the road with some of his buddies who were black and on these tours. Hope you enjoy it. If you do, be sure to hit like, subscribe, the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Once again, my good friend, Duane Eddy.
We'd have 10, 12 acts going out to do shows in coliseums and everything, and they had an orchestra that backed everybody up, except me. I had my own group, and Bo Diddley would take his own guys. But the rest of them all worked with the orchestra, and they had charts, and they had the orchestra in one band and us in another. Did I say that right? They had the orchestra in one bus and us in another, all the acts. So I'd be riding along with Bobby Darin, Sam Cooke, Dion, and you know, the Shirelles, the Coasters, the Drifters, the Platters. We'd all be on one bus in seats, you know, just like a regular which is what it was, an ex-Greyhound bus they chartered.
How did you guys work it out when you hit areas that the black artists couldn't get a hotel room?
They'd drop us off at the white kids off at downtown, like once we went below the Mason-Dixon line, which is something really upset me at the time because I'd had no experience with that growing up in Arizona. I went to school with black kids, Mexican kids, Indian kids, friends with all of them. Never gave it a second thought, and came back to New York, did the first bus tour, and I was riding with Thurston Harris one day, the first day, and we went south. We were going to Norfolk, Virginia to play, and we stopped somewhere in Maryland, but it was below the line, and right from New York City. I mean, it just was like throwing a bucket of cold water on you. And I got out of the bus and started to walk in. It was at a bus station, too, a Greyhound bus station. We were going to have lunch. They had a cafeteria in there. And we'd ridden all morning. We were starving. And I started to walk in with Thurston. He says, Duane, he says, you go in that door and I'll go in this one. And I thought, what's he doing? He's messing with me or something. I said, no, you go in that door, I'll go in this one. You know, I thought they'd probably both wound up the same place. And he said, no, I'm serious. And I said, well, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And he said, well, look. And I looked, and it said, colored, white. And I turned as red as his guitar. And I just didn't say another word. I just turned around and went back to the bus, and I wouldn't even go in there. And I was not hungry all of a sudden. And Root, the driver, was locking up, and he said, oh, you're not going to eat? And I said, no. He said, okay, well, if you change your mind, he says, lock the bus up on your way in. I said, I will. So I just sat there until they came back, and then that afternoon, Charlie Carpenter was the road manager, and he was I thought of him as a black John Wayne, you know, because he'd just say, all right, 6:30 for 7. The bus will be here at 6:30. We're leaving at 7. If you aren't on it, you're left behind. Okay. He's almost like that, But he was wrangling a bunch of teenagers, basically, young kids, early 20s. Even Chuck Berry was still young then. He was only like in his late 20s, mid-20s, late 20s. So they were all young kids, and he had to keep a firm grip on them, and he did. But he explained to me all that afternoon as we rode on down to Norfolk what the situation was in the South. And I was stunned and amazed. Just never thought about it, Didn't come into my world. And but I thought about it a lot after that, and they would drop us off, as I said, in downtown, and then they'd take the black kids to what they called Soul Town, which was usually the black section of town, I guess. And they'd find a hotel. I guess they had hotels there, and they stayed there. And I never heard a word about it from anybody, Just nobody said a thing about it. And but there were times when my guys and I would, if we were driving through the country and there were no towns or anything, you'd see maybe a big hamburger stand over there, a diner or something. And Charlie'd say, Duane, you want to take the orders and get the food for us? And I'd say, sure. So Jim Horn, Larry Nexel, and I'd jump off and take everybody's order and jump off and run in and buy burgers for everybody, or whatever they wanted, and come carrying it back out to the bus, and we'd all eat and go on. And there were other kids too that helped. Dion and whoever else on the bus who was white, sometimes they'd go up and get something to go to. But I just remember a couple of times where we did that and just got it for everybody and took off. But one interesting thing I thought about all that, those times, because it was before the Civil Rights Act and all that stuff really started kicking into gear. This was 1958, 59, and I think all those kids around the country would see these shows in these big auditoriums, and they'd see a white act, a black act, 2 white acts, 3 black acts, another white act, black act. And they'd see the Coasters, they'd see Dion, they'd see the Everly Brothers, and then they'd see Laverne Baker. And they had never seen this before. This had never happened, And so, usually, if it was either a black artist or a white artist, it shows. And mixing them up like that, but they loved all the music, And it was all good music, and the audiences loved it. So I think that kind of acclimated a lot of kids in those days. I think it was our little contribution, no big deal, but a little contribution toward, integration. And because they didn't separate the audiences, although when I went to South Africa, they did. They had the black kids over here and the white kids over here. At first, I just stand over there in front of the black kids and play, and just kind of ignore the white kids, and then I realized it wasn't their fault. So I'd stand in the center and work to both of them, But we didn't have that, thank goodness, in America. All the kids are mixed up, black and white kids together, watching black and white acts together. And so I think it, may have softened things up a little before they started all the stuff with the schools and the Civil Rights Act and so forth.
I wonder where you were when you first heard your first record on the radio, what happened, what your thoughts were.
I think I was still working in country groups in Phoenix when I heard my first record, which was Moving and Grooving on the radio there in Phoenix. And I remember one day we were in the studio, probably cutting Rebel Rouser, and or some of the other tracks we did during those same 2 or 3 days, and because Moving and Grooving did well enough that we could. They wanted us to go back in and do some more, and we were in there doing some more. Excuse me, and Floyd Ramsey came running into the studio, said they're going to play Moving and Grooving on Dick Clark's show. So we all set our instruments down, went into his office, and there where he had a little TV and he had a bandstand on, and we watched him play Moving and Grooving. It was just strange, just weird, you know. I mean, I couldn't associate it with myself, really. I mean, I could, but I couldn't. I don't know how to explain that, you know. It was kind of a cool feeling, but I'm, you know, all right, we've seen it. Let's get back to work, you know. And this is more fun than that. and I do remember too. I was over in L.A. doing a show in February, not long after Moving and Grooving came out, and it was down at the State Theater downtown L.A. That was Thurston. That's where I met Thurston Harris and the Sharps, and Roy Hamilton, Don and Dewey, and anyway, they'd run a movie in between the stage shows. It was the most horrible C movie you ever saw. It was supposed to be about rock and roll, and all they did, the only guitar players all played. And that was their rock and roll solos every time, you know. And it was just phony rock and roll and a terrible movie. Anyway, we did our shows between. We worked from like 11 in the morning till 12 at night, you know, 11:30, 12. One night after I got to know the Sharps, they became good friends, and they said, you want to go hang with us tonight, you know? Let's go down, and they said there's an all-night DJ, WKFJ or something like that. I don't remember the call letters, but I do remember the DJ's name was Charles Trammell. And so I said sure. So we piled in my old '56 Chevy and convertible, and they wanted to go in my car. Apparently they thought it was a nice car, so no telling what they drove. But they've been working longer than I have, so I figured they probably had nicer cars, but I don't know. They wanted to go with me anyway, so I drove, and we went down South Central in L.A. and over wherever the station was, and went in, and I'd never done interviews. I didn't know. I was very shy, you know. But Charles Trammell was just a sweetheart to me. He, you know, opened up the interview and talked to me. He seemed happy to see me, as if it had been Roy Hamilton himself, or Elvis even came in to see him, you know. And the Sharps knew him. They'd been there before, but he just made it real easy and did most of the talking, so I could say yep and nope and well, it's this or that, you know. And then pretty soon they got laughing at me, the guys did, and you know, so I loosened up, and before I knew it, the interview was over and we were back in the street, you know. But the streets, it's 2 o'clock in the morning and people are partying, standing around, going. The shops were open. It was all black people, and down in Watts there. So then we went down from there down to the 5-4 Ballroom, I think they called it, and big ballroom. And there was a great orchestra in there playing. I mean, they had horn sections and a guy and a girl singing like the old 40s bands, but they were doing blues. Up-tempo, slow, medium, dancing, you know. So the guy said, they want you to sit in, Duane. And I said, no, I don't know what they're doing, man. And I said, oh yeah. He says, the guy wants you to, he knows you're here, he think you're blowing him off if you don't go up and at least play Moving and Grooving with him. And, well, okay. They said, we got your guitar and amp, man, we'll get it. Give me the keys. So they ran and got my guitar and amp, set me up there on stage and everything. Also, I didn't tell you this part. We'd been sipping on a little Thunderbird wine, and I was feeling pretty loose by then. So I get up there between two other guitar players, and I'm just sitting there not doing anything. I mean, I tried the guitar. Yeah, it's working, you know. But I'm not playing. I'm just sitting and listening to them, and they're just rocking, man, and it's cooking, and it feels good, and I'm really getting to like it, you know. So I start, whatever, you know. And then I realized, you know, they're only doing 3 chords too, you know. So anyway, it came to my turn, and they said, "Well, you're next, man." And I said, "No, no, no, no." And they said, "Oh yeah, the band leader already said." And I looked over, and he said, I said, "Okay." So I tried. I tentatively started playing, and then pretty soon I got a little more confident, you know. And then I built it up, kind of. And the band started doing that with me, you know. I'd go. And I thought, this is a kick, man. This is great. How do they do that? How do they know what I'm going to do? But they did, and that's how I learned to play blues, actually, that night. And I stayed up there for about a half hour and had a big time. And then I finally said, well, they came up and said, well, we better go. You know, this is going to go on all night. We got to work tomorrow. So they grabbed my stuff, and I grabbed my guitar, and everybody's patting me on the back as I'm going out.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was really nice, really, really sweet and friendly. And they say, play some more, you know, come back again. And it's really a nice night. The Sharps later went on to become the Rivingtons. The Rivingtons had a record called Papa Ooh Mau Mau. It was a huge hit.